When it comes to Ripple, the fact is that a lot of investors do see XRP as just another altcoin. But what's happening behind Ripple's ETF push right now tells a pretty different story, because quietly, the company has been building tangible relationships with some of the biggest financial players on the planet. Now, if this ETF were to go live, it's not just going to validate Ripple. It's going to do a lot more than that. It could, in a big way, rewrite a lot of the global digital assets adoption. So if this does happen, it really could completely reshape the crypto landscape. Just think of what happened when the SEC approved BTC's ETF. Now, imagine that same shockwave hitting XRP. But there is a pretty big sell-off risk just around the corner that's also worth considering. We're going to break down all of what this means for Ripple, its future, and of course the future price of XRP. Welcome to the channel. My name is Maddie, and this is Altcoin Buzz. XRP or otherwise, if you choose to invest, I wish you well. Just remember, I am not a financial or investment advisor, nor is this video official financial or investment advice. There's a lot of talk right now about XRP ETFs going live. This discussion was one that really started in the midst of the US government shutdown. That's no longer the case. Now things have reopened. I think it's fair to assume the government is going to stay open for the time being. We'll see if that's 100% accurate, but that's going to be the assumption for this video. We are assuming that things are going to kind of revert to the way they used to be, that the government is going to be open and working again. That is the context in which we're going forward and making some assumptions and drawing some conclusions here. So that being said, there is still no guarantee, if you will, that the SEC is going to focus on ETF filings. And even if they do, even if that is something they want to prioritize, there's no guarantee as far as which running order the SEC is going to do this in. So that's just something to keep in mind. But again, let's now, in the context of the government shutdown ending, let's keep that in mind and assume that's going to be the case going forward. Now that the government shutdown has ended, it is quite likely that both the Bitwise and Franklin Templeton ETFs are going to need manual SEC approval. So probably it's safe to assume we can expect a short delay before they launch. 21 shares and CoinShares also have filings pending. However, those are without that 20-day clock amendment. And check this out here. In total, there are 11 XRP ETFs that are listed on the DTCC. A listing here is required as a prerequisite before an ETF can go live. What this all boils down to is that there's kind of a very small window in which the SEC can act, meaning that it's still very likely that the Canary XRP ETF is just going to go live automatically. However, keep in mind that the SEC can or rather actually probably will issue a comment letter or stop order before that 20-day window closes, meaning that all other ETFs are not going to automatically go live. This is a standard SEC protocol when reopening after a shutdown. The SEC, they often kind of triage auto-effective so-called filings first. And look, it all sounds a little bit confusing, admittedly. It is, in all fairness. It just kind of comes down to how the SEC is going to start reacting now and prioritizing things, given that the shutdown has ended. But the bottom line is that things seem to be on track, at least for the Canary XRP ETF. Nonetheless, there are 4 other ETF filings that should also go live pretty soon, in all likelihood, most likely within this month, so November 2025. And this is pretty important news for XRP, obviously. But there's other stuff going on. There's more as far as updates, as far as announcements and news when it comes to the latest developments with Ripple and XRP. So let's take a closer look at those. This Altcoin Buzz Spotlight video is sponsored by Walrus Protocol, which has the fastest solution for data storage on the market today, and it's from the team behind Sui. Their token and airdrop were a huge success. Walrus is already a top 150 coin. In fact, it's so resilient that even with only a few nodes operating, your data availability will never be affected. Walrus continued operating as usual in late October, even when Amazon Web Services had its huge outage all across the web. And this is especially important for AI models and their data sets. Decentralized AI solutions are important to many of us in the industry, and I'm sure many of you as well, because the last thing that we want to see is giving up our data for free again. like we did with Web 2 social media companies. But AI models are big, huge databases that need training on one end and then specialized, limited access on the consumer end. Walrus was built exactly for this. Its specialty in large pieces of unstructured data means storing models to train to your liking on your private data is easier and cheaper than ever before. And Seal helps you control who accesses it. That means you can use Walrus to create an AI app to sell to others with the exact user permissions and controls that you need. And your app will not go down just because Amazon or some other cloud provider does. So try Walrus today, whether you need it to store an NFT or an entire AI model. You get the same smooth, fast, and cheap storage service. Follow Walrus on X for more updates. So for XRP holders, the ETF approvals are pretty exciting. But like I said, there's more happening besides these ETFs. For example, we seem to have BlackRock, which is pretty bullish on Ripple. We have BlackRock's Maxwell Stein, who was recently quoted as making some statements about Ripple. He said, quote, "The market is ready for large-scale blockchain adoption." He also added that, quote, "Ripple's infrastructure could soon move trillions." And it's safe to say that Mr. Stein is a pretty big deal. He is director of digital assets at BlackRock, and he's also a member of the corporate executive COO executive team at BlackRock. And in this capacity, Stein helps drive the firm's entire digital asset strategy. Ripple has also started a collaboration with MasterCard, WebBank, and Gemini. Gemini, of course, being the crypto exchange owned by the Winklevoss brothers. This introduces RLUSD settlement on the XRP ledger for fiat credit card payments. And the first available card is the Gemini XRP credit card. You may have heard about this. And of course, RLUSD, that's Ripple's US dollar-backed stablecoin. So this should help blockchain-based settlement processes between MasterCard and WebBank. And to clarify, WebBank is the Gemini card issuer, so that's kind of where they come in. And the Gemini credit card now launched an XRP version. It already has a Bitcoin card and a Solana edition, so now they welcome an XRP edition. And that's a big deal because, as you probably know, with TradFi, it can take 2, maybe 3 days to move money behind the scenes. In this case, between MasterCard and WebBank. However, by using the XRP ledger, these settlements happen within seconds, almost instantaneously. That is, of course, the advantage of using blockchain rails on a network like Ripple, or rather, it's XRP ledger to be more accurate. So you swipe your card, the settlement happens in RLUSD within seconds. There are no intermediaries. There are no middlemen involved. There's no delay, the kind that we're used to with TradFi, with banking infrastructure, right? Now, all of this is currently in the pilot phase, but if the pilot program works, it could very well scale MasterCard's entire global network. So pretty exciting, and we'll be pretty eager to hear what the data are as far as the results of this. But what does it all mean for the price of XRP? Which currently stands at $2.43. It's kind of been in a sideways shuffle now for not quite a year, because as you can see, it's up over 250% on the year. But maybe for 11 months, it's more or less kind of been sideways. However, XRP ETFs could produce some pretty significant institutional inflows. This doesn't mean that magically the XRP price goes to $5, $10 overnight. Look, it's still sitting at right now, as I record, a $148 billion market cap. So this is a big project, and it's not as agile, obviously, as some of the smaller altcoins. So it's not going to be instantaneous, but that is going to bode well for the project overall. I would say let's look back to what happened with the BTC and ETH ETF prices, or I should say the ETFs, but the prices of Bitcoin and Ethereum after the approval of their corresponding respective ETFs, right? Initially, both their prices actually fell, if you recall, but it took a few weeks, and then we were kind of in new all-time high territory, actually. Bitcoin actually first fell below $40,000, and then it hit that new all-time high, at the time, $73,000. So I would say realistically, $5 to maybe $6 in the medium to long term is a target, but you know, it's going to take a little while to get there. You got to be patient. The XRP army always sees the funny side of things. They kind of inject some levity into the situation pretty well, actually. They expect much higher prices. I don't know if $10 or $20 is realistic. That's what some are saying. However, just don't forget that there are also big XRP sell-offs of 90 million XRP in some instances during the last week. That's always a risk when it comes to XRP. Ripple just holds too much of the token, too much XRP, which they can dump on their users at any given moment. So it's a consideration there. But let me know in the comments below what you think, where the price of XRP is going to go. Let's say, look, what are we now? The 13th of November. So let's say by the end of this year, by the end of 2025, what kind of price action can we expect for XRP? Let me know in the comments below. Also, be sure to follow our X and Discord accounts. You can find those links in the description of this video.